irrelevant my fears were called. Constantly, I was told to get over it, to snap back to reality and to realize that the darkness held nothing but a room which was lit up a few moments ago, containing pieces of wood brought from trees that resided within the mist of the unknown, a room containing rods of iron that were melted and casted into something desirable at temperatures whose digits would go beyond what most of our wallets hold. A room holding fond memories of the past, filled with things that at some point or the other meant much to one of us. But to me, once the lights went off, the monsters came, running through the corridor as I tried to escape the grasp of the hands that pried for me through the void, trying not to look back, too afraid to see what might lay there. My fear felt far from irrelevant. Paintings with the most elaborate combination of colors and designs, depicting the effort and the time that my mother had put into it, held another sight for me to be afraid of. Whether it be the one with the Egyptian queen with a crown embedded with the blue and green gems and round glass, the background containing crooked pieces of eggshells given a coat of brown, or the one with the blue-colored god with his eyes closed in bliss and a flute hanging off his lips, the idea of movement from these inanimate objects drove me to painful extents containing bouts of anxiety and panic attacks. My nightmares and blues were inspired from works of art, literally. The portraits of those no more hanging off the walls in the house or fondly kept on a shelf or the table was not something easy for me to come to terms with. Knowing that they were the people my parents were loved by was the only connection I had to them, the only thing that connected me to them in some way. Not getting a chance to know who they were, to experience life for them, for it felt as if mine was traded for theirs, having their eyes watch my every move was nerve-wracking. The strangers whose mere photograph at home shouldn't have felt so strange, with whom I was supposed to be bound by more than just blood, were nothing but faces of people who would forever stay unknown. For a phase of my life, another day at school was capable of causing me a fever that would appear out of nowhere, with rows of desks filled with kids whom I couldn't care less about, and then the ones I couldn't stop caring about. I think I figured out a small part of myself. I couldn't care enough, never understanding the right amount of concern and love that was considered optimum. Nevertheless, I had been bestowed with greater beings that I needed to stay wary of. The teachers with their perfectly arched eyebrows and firm lips, with their stoic stances and uptight tones of voice, reciting what they were told to teach, barking orders in the highest pitch possible wasn't a pleasant sight to face every morning. Facing people who I've never met before, being judged by them within the initial minutes of regarding their existence for the very first time made me want to blend into the crowd and lose myself to anonymous. But the perception of that too changed over time. It went from having the potential to allow the crowds to cover up my presence, to consume me thoroughly, to not accepting anything other than at least a mere acknowledgement of my attendance. The subject of my distress gradually shifted from being a somebody to a nobody. I didn't want to be unidentified anymore, rather I preferred being mysterious. The feeling that prominence and esteem brought was embraced by open arms that scooped up as much as it could contain, possibly even more. The sight of a syringe with its pointed bloodsucker of a needle at the top and the small container with its measurements at the bottom was what the horror movies directed by me would be made of. Poking and prodding at the thin layer of skin over my elbow, trying to find the vein, the perfect spot to break into the dermis and vacuum into it every drop of blood that the little vessel could hold. Those agonizing moments of hand-holding and cursing with beads of sweat dripping down my forehead and the lack of oxygen gripping at my throat was what prompted me to start taking care of myself. Grabbing anything edible that my greedy hands could reach, the simple pleasures of having the most basic needs filled made me feel content, not allowing anything to just simply pass by without being experienced by my taste buds. But as I grew up, the priorities changed from being content to being the best version of me that is possible. And contrary to what I believed, it didn't really mean the same. Not expecting anything less from myself, giving into temptations and succumbing to the power of sugar, lactose, deep-fried potatoes, thin-crusted pizzas, and chocolate chips cookies wasn't something I regarded as strength and restraint. Understanding from what I deemed to be the mistakes mistakes that the people I adored made, analyzing myself and constantly checking for any signs of weaknesses, considering my trust to be something of extremely high worth, and never just giving it away to someone without a price. Finding reasons to put my faith into some, but more than that, searching for causes that can raise suspicion. Not giving anybody an opportunity to know who I am, dreading the notion of addressing myself for who I am. For going beyond thinking of myself as more than a third person, as more than a representation for a metaphor, to get over all of this wasn't as easy as surfing over a wave on a hot summer day. Rather, it was like having all the moisture in your body being drained out of your pores, like detoxifying. Being truthful to myself, I perceived the reality and knew that I wasn't through with all of it just yet. For if I was, I would have been able to recognize myself in the you that meant nothing but me. Thank you.